Welcome to Fridays with Friends, the Friday edition of the Unperfect Podcast, where I get to pick the brains of some new and old friends of the Unperfect Podcast. And today we're going to be continuing our conversation that I had with Julie Bagamary from episode number 79. So if you missed the first half, pause this and go back and catch it, because Julie does a wonderful job of just telling us her story, her journey, of how God led her to fostering and adopting, and she shared with us a lot of great insights into loving kids that come from these kinds of hard backgrounds. But this week she's got a lot more advice for us, and she's got some insights and even how we can come alongside families that are called to fostering and adopting and give them support that will actually be really helpful. So I know you're going to love the rest of our conversation here in episode number 81. So listen in. Okay, how can people, let's say someone doesn't feel called to foster or to adopt, or not in a position to do it, but they want to come alongside and serve those who are doing it. And I think I know a lot of people like that. And sometimes people would ask me, what can I do to help you? And honestly, I was treading water most of the time.
Right.
My life was so chaotic. I couldn't even tell you what you could do, because I don't even think, that brain fog that you get, you and I have talked about that a lot. So what are some ways or some ideas you could give for how people can come alongside those and serve, like practical ways they can minister to families who are in the trenches of fostering and adopting?
Okay, I just want to share a quick story. I went on a retreat and I needed a ride. An older lady gave me a ride. I did not know her. And the leader of the retreat said, "You guys will be fast friends." And I didn't feel like I had time for another friend. I didn't have time for anything in my life
Right.
extra. And this person truly became a friend to me. She's probably about 10 years older than I am. And that turned into Monday evenings a lot, maybe every other week. I would go to her house for tea and cookies, and I could just say whatever I wanted to say.
Right.
And she helped me get perspective. She loved on me. And then one Friday or one night, she said, "Bring your cooler." And I did. And she had made soup in these large yogurt containers, and there was enough for 4 weeks. And about
Wow.
every month, she gave me more soup and homemade bread. And she did that for 4 years.
Wow.
And to the end of our season of being foster parents. And, I'm a decent cook. I could have done all that. It was her way of loving on us. And those soups I used those on therapy days, and they became, put it in the crock pot, pull the bread out of the freezer, and come home from therapy, stop at the playground, and dinner's ready. And it was just one less thing on probably the hardest day of the week. And, every now and then she'd slip me a bag of cookies in a brown paper bag. So, she's like, "You don't have to share these with anybody." You know, but, in the summer she would bring popsicles. And, we've had people take kids to appointments, when the scheduling of stuff is difficult. Just having a child over and following what you need from them. Sometimes our children had some special needs, and it's, "Please don't do this," and "Please do this." And they followed that.
Yes.
Because, if they don't, it just makes it harder. And I didn't need harder.
Right.
So, maybe getting respite. There was a friend or someone else to watch the child so that we could go out on a date. Sometimes people would give gift certificates to restaurants so that you could just go out and eat and not have to think about the financial part of it. There's so many things. We also had people that would give us good used suitcases, so that the children, if a child was here for a few weeks, a lot of times they came in with their things in a plastic bag,
Right.
and they could take their things out in a suitcase in dignity. And so we had our attic, lots of suitcases up there. Ones I would get at thrift stores and new ones. I mean, just being able to have that, um, giving gifts to the children of things that you approved of,
Mm,
and kind of running those things through you and not just assuming, because for reasons that you can't always explain, some things are good and some things are not. And
exactly.
so, it's helpful to really run things by the parents first and get their take on it instead of just a surprise, because that's not always helpful. And the bottom line is to offer to support the parents and ask what would be most helpful for you, because every family is going to be different.
Sure.
Some family might not like to have food brought in every week. For me, it was great. I
Yeah.
appreciated it.
I can't imagine anyone not wanting food brought in
I
every
know.
week.
I know.
Uh,
I know.
but yeah, we had a similar situation to that when our second son was born with a lot of medical issues and came home with in-home nursing, and it was just a really wild few years there. But we had a couple of families who were like, every Tuesday and Friday, we're going to bring you meals. And I think they did it for, it was a
Hmm.
good like 3 to 6 months.
Yeah.
And even if it wasn't fancy, they were like, we're just picking up pizzas. It was that whole knowing that was taken care of.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
yeah.
Yes, these were not fancy. These were not fancy soups. These
Yeah.
were dump in the pot soups,
Right.
but it was prepared. It was frozen, and I could just pop it in my crock pot.
Right. Yeah, so good. And I love what you pointed out about the respite. That is probably the biggest need I had, and I didn't even know I had it. Like for the first
Mhm.
probably half of our 7 years or so, I didn't even know that was a thing. But I would challenge everyone to read your book about this because, like you were saying, the what things are okay and what things aren't okay. Because what our kids don't need is for people to come in and be Mary Poppins. They don't need Disney
Right.
World. They don't need candy. Like, and I think we
Yeah.
just have this. We in general kind of have this. Oh, we want to spoil these kids because they haven't had
Right.
that. Um, but it's exactly what you said. There is so much for reasons everyone's not going to understand why that's not helpful. The only thing they really need to be spoiled with is the love of Jesus. And
Right.
but in so many cases, as you talk about so well in your book, which I will mention finally at the end, but just the routines and how important it's almost the opposite of what you think is going to help them the
Right.
most. So yeah, that's great to what you said of finding people that will go along with what you, because sometimes you're having to, your parents, like my mom lived close enough by, she was our biggest ally in terms of respite, or if we ever wanted to go somewhere overnight, and just knowing she kind of gets this and she's gonna
Mhm.
do what we have asked. It's great when people will follow through with what's important and what is important
Right. Right.
to them.
And trusting you in that.
Right. Yeah, that is huge. That is huge. Because
Mhm.
really, we say often you're the expert on your kid, and that's true with foster kids too. You know the backstory, and you've done a lot of research on what's going to make the easiest transitions from whatever home they're going to. Yeah, and I hadn't thought about that, about the appointments. Man, I would have had so much more time if I had thought to ask people, can you take them to this? Because we had physical therapy and occupational therapy and, therapy appointments, doctor's appointments. We had all kind of stuff. So you've been a bio mom, a foster mom, an adoptive mom, and now you're a nana. I'm constantly coming to you for wisdom anyway, but I would love for you to just share any encouragement that you want to give to the moms listening to this episode. I'm sure you could write a whole book just to answer that question. Maybe that's your third book. But
Oh,
maybe
I don't know.
maybe give us one or two nuggets to encourage moms at any stage of their journey.
Well, I mentioned before, getting together with other moms or other women that would encourage me, that I could encourage and build into that's been a huge thing. And it comes in the form of self care.
Right.
And for me, that includes doing art every day. That includes going for a walk. I'm a big walker. Not everybody likes to walk, but maybe you like to do some other form of activity or something just to get the body moving. And I was challenged by another foster mom during a really hard season to start a thankful journal.
Mm.
Um, you could call it grateful or whatever, and to write down 3 things every night before I went to bed in this journal. And during that season, it was hard.
Right.
It was hard, and the challenge was you couldn't write the same thing every night.
Mm.
And so, there's studies done about how, it's good to be thinking about positive things before you go to bed so you can sleep, because, sleep wasn't always the best when we would
Right.
have, trauma in our home. And I have carried that on still. It has grown and evolved, and I write maybe 3 or 4 sentences, but it has turned into where I'm reading through the New Testament this year. And so right now I'm in Luke 12. And so last night I wrote a verse out from Luke 12. And then I do it in the form of a prayer. Thank you, Lord, for, and I write out some things, and I move on. A fun thing I do with that is every night I write in I might write in script, I might write in all caps, I might write,
Mm.
block letters or whatever. And so that's kind of made it a fun thing for me, because that's what I need to do to make it fun.
Right.
But I've carried that on, and that's been really helpful. And I rarely go back and read that. So it's not
Mm.
necessarily, something for that purpose, but it is good. I would say, if you need your own therapy, which I did, to get that, and there's no shame in that at all.
Absolutely.
We all have stuff that we need to deal with, and sometimes you need a professional, and sometimes your girlfriends or family can help you with that. But if you need additional help, that do it, because
Absolutely.
that has been really good for me. And art, for me, art is a big one. And cookies, I like cookies and ice cream.
Yes.
So,
Yes. I love it. And
yeah.
yes, I like to say we have normalized therapy around this house because
um,
everyone's done it, and we even joke sometimes. We're like, "Oh, you might need to go talk to Carol about that." Carol's
mhm,
one of the therapists that several of us use.
mhm,
But yeah, it bring like you said earlier, it brings up a lot in you. But I think it's healthy for any mom, honestly, any woman.
yeah,
It's just there's so many things that we don't realize about ourselves until we have a second person there who is asking the right questions to get us to process it.
right,
Yeah, so
right.
I think that's huge.
Well, and I would say too, I kind of skimmed over it, but being in the Word,
Mm, sure.
encouraging myself. I also do daily affirmations where I've written out things of, mine starts off, I'm Julie Bagamary, child of the risen King. I'm a fun Nana, a loving mother, and a faithful wife. And then I go through scriptures of things that are true that honestly, I just have to remind myself. And when I get off track and don't do it for a while, it's easy to forget. David encouraged himself in the Lord, and I need to do that too.
Yeah, I love that. And that's a great thing for our kids to do too. Is I
Yes.
remember there was a time one of my kids each day she would write things she was thankful for, and she would write what is my affirmation statement for the day? Like what's something I'm going
Mhm,
to believe about myself, that
mhm, mhm.
similar to what you just said. Yeah, I
Well,
love
we
that.
we had we had kids that came through our home do affirmations as well, and I also had a common, out in the kitchen, thankful journal
Mm,
that we wrote something down, just, hey, what's one thing you're thankful for today? And, we had one little girl, I tell this story that she said, I don't have anything to. And so as time went on, she began to think of things, and she
mm.
began to ask if she could write in the thankful journal,
Wow.
and instead of at just breakfast. And so, um, yeah, those things were good. But I also, and I do this sometimes with my art students, is especially if they're if they're open to it, I have them write an affirmation of who they are. And that is helpful as well.
I like that. So I'm going to share, because for the listeners, Julie and I get to walk every once in a while. And on one of these walks, she gave me some of the most amazing and life-changing parenting advice that I needed at that moment. I'm not even sure I've told you this, Julie, but there was one point where my oldest biological son was around 16 or 17, and we were just clashing. Like, it was driving me crazy. And for me, and he was a great kid. Like, it wasn't like he was going off and doing bad things. We were just clashing in the home. And I will never forget, you said something like, Shelley, he's at that age where he needs to break away from his mama and experience his own independence. And you need to let him. And I don't know if those were your exact words, but it was almost comforting to me. Like, I quit taking that resistance personally and just accepted this is just a part of this circle of life. Like, this is what the next season. So I really appreciated your wisdom and your honesty there to be able to say, you probably need to back off a little bit there. And and it's funny, I'll add that when he went off to college, I started getting weekly calls about how amazing of a mom I had been. So eventually, as we give them space to grow themselves, they just might come back around and admit you weren't a complete idiot and you might have been right about a couple of things. So
right.
so that's good.
I had to learn those things the hard way. Like I said, I have 4 kids, and you learn. Yeah. And I'm sure someone sewed that into my life as well.
Right. And it goes back to the finding people to mentor you. Like, that's so key to have people you can process things with, but who can also give you wisdom, who are a little farther ahead of you in that journey and can speak into you. Well, 2 really amazing books were written by you. So I would love for you to just tell our listeners what those are, and then maybe let everyone know where they can find you. We'll put links to all of this in the show notes, but yeah.
Okay. Well, you can find books and art on juliebagamary.com. And the first book I wrote, and I told in the very beginning did not want to write this book, but I felt like the Lord called me to write it so that I could help other people. It's called Foster Parenting Matters. Do you want me to show it? Because I haven't.
Yeah, go ahead and show it. That'd be awesome.
Okay. Foster Parenting Matters, and this is some of my art of an adult with a child hand, so that comes in. My desire was to help other people learn through some of the things that I had to learn the hard way, and hopefully help them so that their journey could be a little easier. And there's a lot of stories in there, hard ones, good ones, funny ones, and a lot of practical things that I think will be helpful for people. The second book I wrote was a lot more fun to write, creating a legacy with art. And this is a picture of all my grandkids' hands that's on an apron. They took the apron out for the cover. But because I do art with my grandkids, and I do it on Zoom because they don't all live here.
Right.
I do it in person with them. But like we were speaking earlier, art is just very healing, and it's good, and it brings people together. It builds relationships. And so the subtitle of that is Innovative Ideas to Strengthen Relationships with Your Family. And in this book is a lot of helpful things, but also questions. For instance, near the beginning, it says, think about your grandchildren or your children. How many years left do you have before they leave your home? And when I did that for myself personally, that was like scary, and it's like, if you're, and so I wanted to be intentional about building into their lives, and art is a very non-threatening way to do that. So there's a lot of ideas in there to do art together, and it works for building relationships with women as well. So
awesome. And I hope you guys will go check those out in the links that we'll put in the show notes. Again, if you're interested in fostering or adoption or providing respite or understanding your family member or friend that has fostered or adopted, I highly, highly recommend Fostering Parent. Let me say the name of the book.
Foster Parenting Matters.
Foster Parenting Matters.
Yes. And I want to say too, Shelley, that I'm on Facebook and Instagram at Julie Bagamary, but also Julie Bagamary Art. And I have a weekly studio news that I send out for those that sign up for that.
Yes.
So people can keep up with just the fun stuff.
And you can get ideas from even just her newsletter. So definitely, you want to sign up for that.
Well, thank you.
Well, awesome. Thank you so much for sharing your time and your wisdom and your stories with us today. And we'll look forward to having you back.
Well, thank you, Shelley. It's been a blessing. I appreciate your friendship, and this podcast has just been a blessing for me as well. Thank you for doing it.
I know you were inspired and challenged and encouraged by everything that Julie shared with us today. This is not the end. I did cut this interview in half, so you can listen to the next half next Friday or in the next episode number 81. So make sure you tune in to hear the rest of what Julie has to share with us. And I will put links to everything in the show notes that we've mentioned in the podcast. Also, Julie has graciously gifted and signed a copy of her book, Foster Parenting Matters, Creating a Home of Hope and Healing, to give to one blessed, unperfect listener. That could be you. All you need to do is follow the podcast if you haven't already. This makes sure that you get each episode the day it comes out, as well as keeping up with the episodes that you've heard or started or still need to hear. So take a screenshot of the podcast showing you're a subscriber or follower on whatever platform you choose to use and send it to me at hello@shelleysneed.com. Or you can text it to me at the link in the show notes. Put the word foster in the subject line or the text, and voila, you will be entered. I will announce the winner on January 7th, 2025. As always, I am praying that you are able to see glimpses of God's glory in the now and the not yet of your unperfect life this week. See you next time.